Joel watched silently as Holden stumbled into their apartment. Every time Holden hung out with his friends, he would come home drunk and moody. Joel warmed up the honey water he had prepared and handed it to Holden, who was sitting on the sofa. Holden stared blankly at the young man in front of him. Joel was naturally beautiful, with big eyes and pouty lips. It seems that the shirt he wore was missing a button or two at the top, exposing his fair collarbone. Holden pulled Joel onto the sofa. Confused, Joel looked at the man's face and cautiously asked, "Sir, what's wrong?" Holden did not reply. Instead, he slowly unbuttoned Joel's shirt, exposing more of his fair skin. This is not the first time the two of them have been intimate, and Joel naturally realized Holden's intentions right away. It's just that he knew Holden had probably not eaten anything outside. While he was thinking about how to persuade Holden, he was suddenly picked up and laid horizontally on the sofa. Still, he managed to say, "Why don't you drink the honey water first?" With a little more force, Holden pulled down the young man's shorts and replied casually, "I'll drink it later." Holden stared calmly at the young man's big eyes, covered them with his tie, and leaned down to capture his lips. The next morning, Joel woke up early to make breakfast and ate silently with Holden. After breakfast, Holden went to work at his father's company. Joel recalled the cold look in Holden's eyes when he left and sighed. Ever since the two of them met, he had never seen Holden show any expression, aside boredom and indifference. Joel had tried very hard at the beginning to make Holden show different emotions towards him. However, he gave up when he realized that Holden's personality was just like that, cold-hearted and indifferent, even towards his family. He learned to get along with him, secretly hoping and waiting for the day Holden would look at him differently. Joel went to work after taking a short nap. At 5 p.m., Joel was preparing to leave work when one of his colleagues asked, "Do you want to join me for dinner? I don't want to eat alone." Joel hesitated and politely refused. The colleague nodded in understanding and said, "You have to cook for your boyfriend at night, right?" Joel did not deny it and nodded with a smile. In fact, Holden had never admitted the relationship between them. He had been the one to chase Holden until he eventually became less resistant. They lived together and did all the things couples should do for 3 years, so it should be okay to regard him as a boyfriend, right? After preparing dinner, Joel sent a message to Holden and waited for some time while playing with his mobile phone. Holden did not come back, nor did he reply to his message. After some time, he ate alone. On Friday, Holden left early because there was a problem at the company. Joel sat dazedly at the edge of the bed, lost in thought, when he felt a soft, fluffy touch around his ankles. When he looked down, he saw Holden's dog, Fluffy, pulling the corners of the sheets. Joel smiled, reached out and rubbed Fluffy's head. Fluffy was originally Holden's childhood sweetheart's dog. When something happened later, their family relocated abroad, and Holden and his sweetheart were separated. This dog is the only remaining link between the two. Looking at the dog, he cheered up. This dog, who has an original owner, now likes to stick to him. In this way, isn't the past in the past? He doesn't know if Holden still has feelings for his childhood sweetheart. Besides, he's the one living with Holden now. That shows that Holden is willing to accommodate him. It's just that Joel can't help but be a little sad. Holden's first acquisition celebration is coming up, and Joel has been preparing for a long time now. He initially wanted to buy a watch, but considering Holden's identity as the only son of a wealthy family, he obviously has many watches from luxury brands. Eventually, Joel ordered custom cufflinks specially for Holden. A few days to Holden's party, Joel became nervous again. The delivery had been delayed, and he was worried he wouldn't be able to present his gift to Holden when the time comes, so he planned to get something else in the mall, and unfortunately ran into one of Holden's friends. Jace Bryan sneered when he noticed Joel in the mall. "Joel, are you qualified to walk around in this mall?" Ignoring his deliberate taunt, Joel just greeted him in response. Jace laughed loudly and looked at Joel mockingly. He said, "Be sure to follow Holden to the party. I would be expecting you." "All right," Joel replied. Jace smiled contentedly and left. Joel sighed. He knows very well that Holden's friends don't like him. There is a huge gap in their social status. Those rich second generations think he is not worthy to be with Holden and look down on him at every turn. Joel is used to this. He is in a relationship with Holden, not them. As long as Holden still keeps him, he is okay. When Joel got out of the shower, there was a knock on his bedroom door. He dropped the towel on the bed and went to open the door. Holden saw the young man in a bathrobe with slightly wet hair and asked softly, "Just took a shower?" "Yes," Joel replied, smiling slightly. Without saying much, Holden handed a gift bag in his hand over to Joel. "Thank you, sir." Joel didn't know how to react. Holden is fond of gifting him desserts every now and then. In fact, he doesn't like sweets at all, but always accepts them because they were given by Holden. Thinking of this, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Holden's neck. Holden smelled the shower gel on Joel's body, and his eyes gradually darkened. He raised his hand and pulled the belt of the robe, revealing the man's fair chest. Holden picked up Joel and walked towards the bedroom, placing him gently on the bed. During intimacy, Holden covered Joel's eyes as usual and continued with his movements. Lost in emotions, Joel asked, "Sir, can I look at you? Can you not cover my eyes?" Holden froze for a moment, removed the tie around his eyes and turned him over, pressing against Joel's back. After the affair, Holden got dressed and left the room. Joel lay quietly on the bed for a while before walking to the bathroom to wash up. With Holden's cold personality, he understands that he doesn't cuddle with him after they are intimate. What he doesn't understand is why Holden always covers his eyes. He also wants to look into Holden's eyes while being intimate, so he gathered the courage to ask today. As a result, he was turned over instead. On the weekend, Joel's only friend Benjamin contacted him. "Guess who is back?" Benjamin said excitedly over the phone. Joel smiled, asked for the flight details, chatted with him for a while, and hung up the phone. Because it was cold outside, Joel wore a sweater and coat. He looked in the mirror, straightened the non-existent creases on the coat and smiled. Most of the clothes were bought for him by Holden, according to his preferences. Joel had no opinion. As long as Holden likes it, he can always be his mannequin. He sprayed a little perfume on his body. This was also given by Holden because he liked the woody smell. Joel spotted Benjamin in the crowd, rushing towards him with a suitcase. He gave Joel a hug and exaggeratedly kissed Joel's cheek. Joel smiled helplessly and helped Benjamin carry the suitcase to the car. When the two returned to the apartment, Joel went into the kitchen to cook, and Benjamin went to the study in search of Holden. "Cousin, I'm back." Holden responded casually and continued with his work. Benjamin has an active personality, so even though Holden gave perfunctory answers, he still chatted about his trip excitedly. He sighed after some time and asked, "When are you going to marry him? He has dedicated himself to you for 3 years. If you do not want him, let him go." Joel came over to call them for dinner. Before leaving, Holden said to Benjamin, "I didn't force him. It was all his free will." After dinner, Joel accompanied Benjamin to his apartment, which was not far from theirs. Benjamin and Holden are cousins, so naturally, he can afford apartments in this area. The two talked for a while and then separated. On the day of the party, Joel woke up early and made breakfast for Holden. When Holden woke up, he quickly wished him a happy first acquisition and handed the gift he had prepared earlier to him. Thankfully, the cufflinks were delivered before today. Holden stared silently at the gift box in his hand, then inexplicably pulled Joel onto the bed and hovered over him. He pulled the young man's shirt off and folded the shirt to cover his eyes. In the quiet bedroom, ambiguous sounds were heard. When the two people arrived at the celebration venue, several of Holden's friends cheered. Benjamin was also present and rushed directly to Joel's side. "You're late." Joel nodded helplessly. Actually, they were late because Holden didn't like his outfit before, so he had to wait for Holden to pick up different sets of clothes for him, all low-key expensive brands. Several people came over to make a toast with Holden, while Joel sat silently beside him. The group of people chatted and drank for a while. Suddenly, the door of the hall opened, and the whole place fell silent. Several young masters looked from the intruder to Joel with a look of watching an exciting drama. Joel was actually stunned when he saw the person who walked in. Who is this person? From head to toe, he and this person looked similar. The man was wearing a light-colored coat and a scarf around his neck, with a gentle appearance. The coat is exactly the same as the one he is wearing now. The color and details are also the same. Even the shirt that person is wearing underneath, he has an identical one at home. but his clothes were all chosen and bought by Holden. Joel subconsciously looked at Holden and noticed that the man beside him was looking at the intruder with a familiar and tender look. Joel was shocked. He felt an inexplicable sense of panic. He suppressed the fear in his heart and asked, "Is he a friend of yours?" Holden hummed a reply. After some time, he stood up and walked towards the intruder. Joel wanted to demand an explanation, but for some reason, he suddenly lost his courage and watched helplessly as his boyfriend chatted familiarly with that person. Jace walked over to Joel's side, pat his shoulder and sneered, "Counterfeit products will never be able to become genuine products. How do you feel now that you've seen the original?" Joel stared dumbfounded at the so-called original. The only difference between them were their faces. That person had soft and elegant features, whereas his features were a bit sharp. He looked at that person's crystal blue eyes, compared to his big brown ones, and his heart dropped. Indistinctly, he heard one of Holden's friends call out to that person, "Hey Spencer, why are you so late?" Spencer? Spencer Smith? Isn't that the name of Holden's childhood sweetheart? Joel took a deep breath and forced a smile. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Benjamin noticed Joel's abnormality and rushed to his side. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine." Throughout the whole ceremony, Joel watched Holden's interactions with Spencer and smiled self-deprecatingly. Obviously, it is not that Holden cannot show emotions. It's just that the person he wanted to show those emotions to wasn't around. Until now. Joel sat silently, watching the lively atmosphere around him, and then silently left the venue. Benjamin naturally knew the ins and outs of the situation and followed Joel to keep him company. That night, Holden did not return to the apartment, and Joel lay on his bed in a daze. Just when he was drifting off to sleep, he felt someone pressed on top of him. He smelled the familiar body scent mixed with alcohol as Holden kissed him. This time, Joel stopped Holden from tying his eyes. "Can you not tie it today?" he asked. Holden stared quietly at him for a few seconds and turned him over to lie on his stomach. Joel's heart gradually sank. "My eyes, aren't they beautiful?" Joel asked, his voice breaking at the end. Before today, he could deceive himself that Holden did that because he had some kind of kink. But now, he finally knows why Holden likes to cover his eyes. Because in this way, he looks more like that person. The two were intimate that night with their own thoughts. For several days, Holden accompanied Spencer in the name of catching up. After some time, Joel finally couldn't take it anymore and prepared food to send to Holden at the company. When Joel arrived, he looked at the scene in the office blankly, his eyes slightly turning red. Holden was talking and laughing with Spencer. The two of them looked so good together, and the tender look in Holden's eyes was one he had never seen before. Joel stood at the door, lost in thought. In the end, he did not go in to disturb them. At night, Joel went to bed alone. The next morning, Joel met Holden sitting on the sofa. While eating, Joel made up his mind to ask Holden about Spencer. Holden sighed lightly and explained, "He is my closest friend. It has been a while since we met, so it's natural to spend time together." "I see," Joel whispered. Joel thought about his situation for a few days. The nights spent crying alone in bed became frequent. He first handed in his resignation at work. After, he called Benjamin to accompany him grocery shopping and confessed his decision to leave. Although hesitant, Benjamin agreed it was a good decision and promised to visit after he had settled. Joel prepared Holden's favorite dish and called him on phone. "Sir, will you come home tonight?" There was a rustling sound from the other side. After a while, Holden asked, "What's wrong?" Joel asked again timidly. "Sir, will you come home tonight?" Holden replied, "Do not wait for me. I won't be back tonight." Joel stared blankly at the phone that was hung up and smiled sadly. These past 3 years, he thought that if he worked hard enough, Holden would finally show a little emotion towards him. Alas, he was nothing but a joke. Wasted youth. Holden waited for several days and Joel did not return. He remembered when Joel discussed his decision to live with him. At that time, He had taken it as a joke and casually asked him, "Where do you want to go? My house is not a hotel. If you want to leave, then don't come back." Who knows that Joel actually left? One Friday, Holden was going through a few proposals in the office when his phone suddenly vibrated. He picked up the phone and was stunned to see that it was Joel calling. He sneered. Finally had enough of the pranks and want to return? He answered the call and leaned lazily on the chair, waiting to hear what the young man would say. However, instead of the young man's voice, a strange voice suddenly asked, "Hello, are you related to Mr. Joel Rhodes?" The news of Joel's death felt like a prank until the body was brought back. Holden looked at the lifeless eyes of the young man in a trance. He suddenly remembered that the young man had once asked him, "Sir, my eyes, aren't they beautiful?" Holden subconsciously waited several days and nights for Joel to return and tell him it was all a prank. As a result, days turned into months. Each day, Fluffy would wait at the door for a long time, but Joel would not return. In the end, Holden and Fluffy were the only ones left in the apartment. After 3 months of waiting, Holden finally visited Joel's grave. He looked silently at the name on the headstone and clenched the ring box in his hand. Shakingly, he placed the ring he never got to send out beside the headstone and walked listlessly back to his car. Benjamin stared at him with bloodshot eyes and said, "What is the use of regretting it now? Even if you do, he would never know."